Hello, this is the week 4 edition of the Hook'em Horns football show on YouTube. My name is Andrew Miller, site editor over at hookemheadlines.com. With me this week, we have Shane Black, contributor at hookemheadlines.com. Tarek Licor usually joins us. He is not with us this week, so it'll just be me and Shane giving the rundown, kind of some thoughts on the UTSA game. Taking a look at just the entirety of the Big 12 and what this season could look like, especially from Texas's perspective. Last but not least, previewing the Tech game, giving our predictions on that. So Shane, before jumping in, I know I like to talk about our predictions from the previous week. Who got the closest? I did not get the only one that doesn't join us on here that usually gets a staff prediction in is Carson. He didn't get one in last week. So you were second best. Tarek was closest because he keeps having these super optimistic predictions on Texas. I said it in last week's show. I hope that he's correct, and he was. So I'm fine with that. I have been in third or fourth place now every single week. And then you have, I think, de facto you're in second because Tarek's finished in first every single week. So
yep, I'm just right in the middle. Kudos to Tarek. I mean,
we
need his. I mean, I hope he.
Yeah, I was going to say we need his prediction for this week before the game starts on Saturday.
Exactly.
But
yeah, I mean, he's been pretty optimistic, but so far so good. So hopefully we can keep that rolling.
Yeah, that's for sure. But yeah, if you want to give some of your thoughts on the game from last weekend.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting to say the least. If you're just looking at the final scoreboard, 41-20 Texas victory looks, pretty comfortable on paper. This game was anything but comfortable, especially through the first, 40 minutes or so. UTSA obviously got off to a 17-7 lead, and after that onside kick, which they followed up with a trickery touchdown on kind of like a double pass, I really was starting to worry because Texas seed of the pass, end of the Mac Brown era, Charlie Strong era, Tom Herman era, and of course last year, these teams were just built away, and they really lacked that fight in them. Stark came out in his press conference and said, we were pretty mad on the sidelines about what was going on, so we knew we had what it took to kind of change the momentum there, and that's what they did. Finished the game on a 34-6-3 run. I think getting it tied up before the half was huge. We weren't really playing in the scoreboard sector. 17-17, we could kind of regroup, and obviously we came out firing in the second half. And had a couple of big plays, including the rather there and Pittsburgh, but really ball for Texas in the right season. I know a lot of people have talked about it, but I really think the macro theme of this game, of the perseverance from the Longhorns, is what we can take away. And it's something that we think is going to distinguish this team from a lot of the seasons past that we've seen.
Yeah, this win definitely felt different, at least the way that Texas was able to close it out. I mean, if we keep getting pick sixes, then yeah, that'll definitely help. But I agree on the front of like how they closed it out. That does feel different. I will say, like, obviously, I don't really think anyone does, but we're gonna miss Bijan and Roschon next year. This sort of feeling as an NFL fan. I'm a Colts fan in the NFL, so I mean, probably worst team to be a fan of in the NFL this season. But at least last year, I kind of know what that's like when a running back just carries you, and at times definitely got that feeling last weekend. But it was a big game. I'm gonna hold my judgment on saying that this team's completely different until we get a few games into Big 12 play, because what was Texas doing going into Red River last year? Looking pretty good. Ranked inside the top 25, a huge win against Tech. One big non-conference win against one of the better Group of 5 teams where they looked really good. So we're not at a point where, at least in terms of the trajectory of the season, where I'm really ready to say, like, obviously it's different than last season, but I'm gonna hold my judgment until we probably get through the Iowa State game.
Yeah.
To say, but yeah,
I think that's fair.
I've done a lot of content on the game last weekend. I don't know how much we can really take away from bits and pieces of the defensive play. I was a little harsh on Ryan Watts, but I didn't think he was. I think that was his worst game so far this season.
Definitely.
They picked on him a good bit, and he's got it. I mean, he's going to be facing some, like, at least in terms of talent and like just style, like some pretty similar wide receivers against Tech. Oh my God, losing it. Donovan Smith. I was going to say Dominic Smith. Donovan Smith was not as good as Frank Harris, but like Tech's wide receivers, some of them are pretty good, and they got some size. So Ryan Watts can be put to the test again this coming weekend. Hudson Card played well. Obviously, a lot of people wanted. I'd still assume he's probably going to be QB1 on Saturday.
I would say going about Card, I mean, I think just what he's proven over the past 7 quarters, playing a bit hobbled, and he had that huge scramble on 2nd and 20 in the third quarter, or I think it was the third quarter of last week's game. I think the fan base, I mean, if you're not pro Hudson Card now, like, when are you ever going to be? I think clearly the ceiling of this team is different with him at quarterback than with Quinn, even from the little we saw with Quinn. But, I mean, Sark said it. We've known this. Hudson's a Lake Travis guy. He grew up bleeding burnt orange and white, and that shows when he takes the field. So I've seen this on the Twitter timeline, but I think no Hudson Card slander. He did exactly what we needed him to do on Saturday. 15 of 23, 161 yards, no turnovers. He had that big run on 2nd down, and he turned around and handed it off to our 2 best playmakers for a lot of the game, which is kind of what we needed him to do, and he did it well. So obviously he is not Quinn Ewers, but I think that people should realize that and realize that this team can still win games with Hudson at quarterback. It just might not be as flashy as what we saw from Quinn.
Yeah, he was good, and I think what you saw from Hudson, I don't know how much you can take away from the Alabama game, but at least last weekend, it looked closer to what we saw from Hudson in bits and pieces like Louisiana, but I think it mainly looked like when he was playing better before he went down with injury against West Virginia. Making some quick decisions, doing what he needed to. Nothing super spectacular, but getting the job done for sure. Texas Tech's they're a better defense, and he's going to get some different looks, but I'll get into, obviously we'll get into that later. Yeah, so, the only thing with Hudson is the deep ball.
Yeah.
It's just not there. I don't think. Yeah. I don't know how much you can take, but like he had one pass that was kind of catchable to Worthy, and then another one where he missed Worthy. There's going to be another video at the end of the season of like 90 seconds of Xavier Worthy getting missed on deep balls. He's even had a few drops, but it's just a disappointing start to the season in that regard. Okay, so I kind of want to get into just the Tech preview now and kind of talk about what your expectations are heading into that game. I know, or at least I think I saw you were queuing up an article or just covering kind of Tech from that perspective of what they can bring to the table. So any initial thoughts you have on that?
Yeah, so I was looking at the Tech offense today. By the time this video is live, you can check out that article on Hook'em Headlines. But there are some familiar names that have harmed us, the Horns, in the past, and there are some new names, and they have talent both on the outside and at the running back position. It's interesting. Sir Roderick Thompson is a guy that kind of has hurt Texas over his career. But he hasn't gotten off to the strongest start this season, and Todd Brooks is kind of the clear #1 in that backfield. So I'll be interested to see how they kind of use that two-headed monster, because Tech hasn't blocked well in the running game. Their offensive line has been their major kind of weakness. I got eyes on all 4 quarters of their game last week against NC State, and Donovan Smith, I mean, he's like you mentioned earlier, he's not a great quarterback, but no quarterback's going to look good when they're running out of the pocket in 2 seconds. And that's kind of what's going on. They're getting really no push up front when they're running the football, and they're not giving Donovan Smith a lot of the time to throw the football. So I think this could be a big opportunity for our defensive line to come in and kind of insert their will pretty early. Because if we don't, they do have playmakers on the outside, namely Miles Price and Jaron Bradley, who both match up well physically with our defensive back. So I think getting pressure is one key thing that we should be looking for on Saturday.
Yeah, you jumped into the part that I was going to start with when kind of talking about Tech. I don't question the talent or the ability of Brooks and Thompson. Clearly, they've had spurts in their career that prove what they can do. But, yeah, Tech has no form of an interior offensive line when it comes to blocking for the run. They are averaging, it's just a team. They're averaging barely over 100 rush yards per game, and about 3.5 per carry. And you're playing, Houston's run defense, I don't know how good they are yet, just on kind of an adjusted scale. It's not deep enough in the season, but Murray State isn't a very good run defense.
Yeah.
And, they won that game 63-10. NC State even had spurts where ECU was able to get something going on the ground a couple weeks ago against them. Tech, the offensive line is a huge issue for them when it comes to run blocking. Pass pro, they're not good either. But yeah, I mean I mentioned it in my I always do my article of why Texas can win, a path to actual to an actual dominant victory or something like that. And mentioning the size that Texas has on the inside, Tavondre Sweats, Byron Murphy, those guys that have been swallowing up tackles the last couple of weeks, they're going to be huge. What they do might not be showing up on the stat sheet right now, but I'm also going to include Moro Jomo in this. That they're not missing tackles, they are moving bodies. They are generating some pressure up the middle. They are doing everything that they really didn't do last season. And that's, I think last weekend was a great example of how, just that PK's defense is starting to come together a little bit more. Sure, he's made adjustments. I'm sure Gary Patterson has played a role in this. But some of these guys having another year in the system, Byron Murphy finding his way, Tavondre Sweat getting more of an adjusted position as a 3-tech in that kind of middle of that defensive line. That's huge. That's a big reason why I think you see Jalen Ford coming up with 15 tackles last weekend. So, because watching the game, Jalen Ford was good. He was steady. He was finding the ball. That's all we really need from him on a week-to-week basis. He missed some tackles. There were some. I didn't really see anything from Jalen Ford last weekend that was he's going to be a day 1 or a day 2 NFL draft pick. Downright to him having a fumble with the ball in his hands and still somehow he didn't recover it. I think did he force that fumble? Am I mistaken? I think, he forced a fumble last weekend.
Yeah.
And it was right in his hands. He landed right on top of it and wasn't able to recover it. But anytime you got 15 tackles, 4 run stops. But he's just the defensive line is finding its way, and I think that's going to be a huge problem for Tech. And that's something that if Texas is going to win this game, that is going to be one of the big reasons why.
Yeah, it's a good point you make about Jalen Ford, because just looking at the box score on 15 tackles, that's a hell of a day for a linebacker.
Yeah.
That's an ideal day. But if you watch the game, Ford isn't really popping. I mean, like you said, he's where he needs to be, which is all you can really ask of him. The reason he's getting so many tackles is because the big bodies up front are occupying all the offensive linemen, and any tight end that's that's moving as well. So Ford just
Yeah.
happens to be in the right spot. Not happens to be, he puts himself in the right spot, but that's because the big guys up front are taking bodies, which is all you can ask for, really. So I think we should be able to dominate up front. Knock on wood, but this is a very good matchup for the Texas defensive line that has a ton of depth up the middle.
Yeah. And one of the things that I would really like to see, I don't do this level of like stat tracking myself, but it would be nice to have, would be to see like when, let's say like Diamante Tucker Dorsey is on the field compared to like someone like Jet Bush playing off ball, what the team defense stats look like. Because when I see, there are some plays where I just see Jet Bush, a lot like kind of Luke Brockermeyer when he was playing the middle last season, like where it just wasn't getting it done. Too slow, not reading the plays correctly, missing some tackles. But yeah, Diamante Tucker Dorsey is a huge part of this too. That I think he needs to, again, like he's put up decent stats. His grading is pretty good, but like I think he is one of those guys, a lot like Mora Jomo, where he does a lot of the dirty work and doesn't make a lot of mistakes, and it just makes a lot of the guys around him look better. So that, like I said, that's definitely something to not overlook here. As far as Tech goes, yes, the offensive line is a problem for them. I think that's a huge issue. But the biggest thing with Tech is they keep beating themselves in games. The dropped punt last weekend against NC State, I don't know if you saw that. What is it, 2 pick sixes on the season? Yeah. Yes, Donovan Smith has 5 interceptions. There are quarterbacks that have more. But he manages to throw interceptions in a way that I haven't seen many quarterbacks make. Like, it's when he throws an interception, he manages to get it right to the defensive back. He might not make a whole lot of mistakes. I'm a big fan of the turnover-worthy play stat from PFF. I think they do a good job. I used to try to track that myself, and I found that like where sometimes missed tackles, they might define it differently than me, or like, sometimes you'll hear Sark say a different number of missed tackles than PFF had for a game. But turnover-worthy plays, they do well. And you don't see a huge discrepancy for Donovan Smith for his turnover-worthy play rate compared to how many turnovers he has. And that's because, again, when he manages to turn the ball over, it's because he got the ball right to the opposing defensive back. And that, Deshaun Jameson is a great spot for him to get his second pick of the season.
Yeah.
If Tech doesn't make many mistakes, though, this is going to be a really tough game. It's going to be.
Yeah, so, I think it all ties into what you mentioned first, and I kind of piggyback off of what is creating pressure up front, because, like you said, Donovan Smith can gift the defense some interceptions and a couple that we've already seen returned the other way. And a lot of that is because he has to get it out quick because there are guys in his face and he's just pressing. Like last week, nothing was happening for Tech against NC State. Smith started to press, and then we had that pick six that really did it for the Wolfpack. So I think it starts all up front, and then everything else will fall into place. But if you can't get that pressure up front, Tech can pick up 4 yards per carry and methodically work their way down the field, that's where we start to get in trouble. I'll let you go, but I will say one thing. I said this last week. I think this might be a common theme that I'll keep going back to for a lot of this season. It's a game where we're going to want to start fast. Texas is going to need to start fast on the road in Lubbock. It's not a game, especially if we have Hudson Card, who won't be back at 100%. It's not a game you want to get down 2 touchdowns in Lubbock, tortillas going crazy or whatever they do. And then slowly but surely, the Tech offense will pick up confidence. Their defense has always played with confidence this year, and that's how it could get a little hairy. So I'm looking for the Longhorns to start fast this weekend for sure.
Yeah, Tech's always going to be an interesting one for the Longhorns, just because it's probably one of the most unpredictable opponents. I can never get a read on how that game's going to go before it happens. Even in game, super unpredictable. But yeah, Tech matches up with Texas. If you had a healthy Ewers, I don't think Tech matches up very well with Texas. I really don't. I just think that Texas would have answers for a lot of what Tech wants to do. I just in terms of the in-depth analysis that I've done the last couple of days, spent a few hours on it so far, studying. I believe this is how you pronounce it, Tim DeRuyter, their defensive coordinator. Spent some time at Oregon, where most of the film that you can get that kind of tells you what he does, where you can get that from. He runs an interesting defense, so there's concepts that are similar to PK, and obviously West Coast influence. But DeRuyter he does not like to be spread out all over the field and thrown on. He tries to shut down some of the concepts that you would get from a spread offense. So he plays more of a modern, sometimes 3-3-5, sometimes 2-4-5, which Texas has attempted at, or I think they're kind of moving in that direction of the 2-4-5. But Tech is mostly. Correct me if I'm wrong here. If you've watched Tech a lot this season, they mostly run with three actual defensive linemen. That's most of what I've seen.
Yeah.
So the 2-4-5, I don't know how much that's actually come out this season. Maybe DeRuyter pulls a Barry Odom and just completely has a new defensive game plan drawn up for Texas. But the main concepts of Tech's defense that would worry me a little bit for Texas, one is just the play of their defensive line. Their defensive line, some of their more experienced or capable linebackers, obviously Tyree Wilson off the edge, Krishawn Merriweather, at least reliable in run defense. A lot of what Tech is doing this season has really, really been effective stopping the run. If you look at adjusted rushing yards allowed per game, which is a sports reference stat that I kind of like, they are allowing it's the fourth fewest rushing yards per game, third fewest yards per carry in the nation. So they've been effective, especially up the middle. So Texas is probably going to have to try some new things out this weekend. I mean, I know Bijan Robinson had a really big weekend against a run defense for UTSA that was really good against the run the last few seasons, and Bijan was just better.
Yeah.
But Tech's going to be a better defensive front. I don't think you're going to see the same success there. This is where Sark's going to have to get a little bit creative. The Wildcat formation with Roschon's going to be a big game changer, I think, here. This is probably a spot where you'd like Hudson Card to be a little healthier, to have a little bit more of that running threat. Anything I think you can do to throw Tech off and really open up some space in the secondary, I think that's where the opportunities are really going to be for Texas. You're still going to have to get Bijan out in space. You're going to have to I keep mentioning Keelan Robinson. We haven't really seen much from him. Eruption there.
No, you're good.
But yeah, so I think two of the major weaknesses, and I covered that talking about some of the aspects of the Tech defense that Texas can exploit. Their starting star or nickel DB, whatever you want to call that position, pull up the name here. I believe he's a Duke transfer. He's a little bit smaller. He has not been very good in pass coverage this season. It's tough because I was watching film on him yesterday. But Marquis Waters. What's
the number? What's his number?
Marquis Waters, because the other one I was looking at was Rayshad Williams. Marquis Waters is number 9. At 6'1", so not smaller, but he's smaller than their other DBs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe their starting corners are both 6'2", 6'3", so they got a lot of size. Yeah, so Marquis Waters is experienced. I think he's had some trouble adjusting to this defense. I believe this is his second year with Tech, but he hasn't been extraordinarily effective either season. So Waters is mostly going to be covering out of the slot. I think that's going to be some opportunities for Jordan Whittington. I mean, Sark's been getting Whittington involved in a number of ways this season, but yeah, keep getting creative with Whittington. And then Xavier Worthy, depending on who he's matched up against, you're going to have some, like, they play a lot of one high safety, and I think that's going to really be big this weekend because they're going to have to devote additional resources to stopping Texas when they're lined up in 21 or 12 personnel. Either way, Tech doesn't really have the personnel to deal with whoever in the open field. Jatavian Sanders, Roshan Johnson, Keelan Robinson, Bijan especially. So that when they're in that one high safety look, that's going to be another opportunity to get Worthy deep.
Yeah.
Maybe sneak Jatavian Sanders through the seam. There's going to be some place where Tech can get beat deep. It's about a dozen teams now in the FBS that have allowed at least 3 or 4 passes of 50-plus yards. Tech is one of them. So one of the teams, like Murray State's only passing touchdown was, I believe, a blown coverage assignment that went for a 54-yard touchdown. So there's going to be opportunities to beat them deep. One of NC State's touchdowns, like a 40-yard touchdown pass, something like that. So the deep passing game, I said it against UTSA. I mean, we had our opportunities against UTSA to beat them deep. We just couldn't convert. And so, like, that's going to be huge against Tech, is to be able to stretch the field, because you're not going to be able to run the ball up the middle too much. I honestly, if you're pretty predictable, I don't think there's going to be a whole lot in the short and the intermediate passing game. The Tech DBs are lengthy. They can be pretty disruptive in that part. They're not super fast, though, so that's where you can win the day. If Malik Dunlap is matched up against Casey Kane in this game on the outside, I don't know if that's really going to be the case, but then I think Casey Kane is just not going to get a whole lot of looks. If Dunlap is covering Whittington, we spun out to the outside, or motioned out to the outside, or if he's just the boundary wide receiver on a number of snaps, or Worthy is covered by Dunlap, then that's going to be a problem in the intermediate passing game. Dunlap is I did a stat on it today. He leads the Big 12 in forced incompletion percentage. It's some 35% of the balls that are thrown his way have either been a pick or a pass breakup. And most of those have come in the intermediate passing game. So you can beat him deep, at least from previous years. You just we're gonna have to be accurate on the deep balls. I think we're just gonna have to get creative again. You're not gonna beat Tech with a bunch of out predictable slant routes, corner routes, things like that. If you can shake it up, you can get that done. But yeah, they do have talent and experience in the secondary, but they're also not the quickest. And so yeah, they can get beat deep. You can get pretty creative. You can beat them side to side too, like jet sweeps. I think we're going to probably see a couple or a few of those. So yeah, those are kind of my thoughts. Tech's defense is interesting to watch early this season. They've been very, very good. They've been very good in the passing game and defending the run. If you look at their team stats, it's hard to believe that that their season is that they barely beat Houston and that they've lost by double digits to NC State. So yeah, that's my thoughts on it.
I can't imagine Tech fans who have had this crazy good offense for so many crazy good might be a little brief, but they've been offensively inclined for so many years, and then they finally get a defense that can match, and they're pretty stingy, and then their offense just isn't up to snuff this year thus far. I will say, going back to your point where you were talking about the deep shot and how Texas is going to have to take advantage of that. We've obviously noticed that there's a substantial drop off with, the accuracy and overall connection with the Hudson Card deep ball compared to the Quinn Ewers deep ball. Um, just a couple, notes I want to give on that. There really hasn't been a third wide receiver to step up thus far for Texas. They really haven't been given the option. Um, the only guys with 5 receptions or more who are primarily, wide receivers are Jordan Whittington and Xavier Worthy. Sanders, Rojo, and Bijan all have more than 5 receptions as well, but obviously not true wide receivers. Casey Kane would be the next closest, and he's pretty much established himself as the number 3 when it comes to snap count.
Yeah.
Compared to, the number 4, who is Tyreek Milton. He has 5 times the amount of snaps as Milton thus far. But I think it would be to Sark's benefit to maybe throw Milton out on the field, especially if the Tech defense plays to the way you were saying, where it's going to be hard to pick up those intermediate to short, passing games, and we're going to have to take our chances over the top. Milton has certainly proved in the past, to be a speedster who can take the top off a defense. So I think that'd be an interesting thing to see Milton get a few more snaps in this one. Obviously, a smaller speedster. He's not going to play possession against these big corners. He's just going to run straight by them. So I think that'd be interesting to throw him on the field, maybe opposite of Worthy, and see what we can do with 2 really fast guys on the outside. Because Casey Kane does a lot of things really well, but I don't think straight line speed is something that I would say is at the prime of his game.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, obviously this has been a disappointing start for Worthy. Statistically, it's not like it's been terrible, but he's averaging some like 52, 53, somewhere in that ballpark, receiving yards per game. He's had a couple of drops. And I mean, I wouldn't say necessarily drops, but I'd say a few more catchable balls that went his way that he didn't come down with.
Let me ask you, what do you think about the notion? I saw this going around on Twitter. Someone mentioned it about Worthy giving up on deep balls that are somewhat catchable. You just kind of alluded to it there, but I don't know if I feel like sometimes he's so focused on getting by his defender that, especially when a ball is released early, he doesn't look up until too late, and then the ball, is already kind of hitting the turf. But I think there is some validity to that where sometimes I see a ball hit the turf and I'm like, could Worthy have gotten that if he got his eyes around quicker or if he laid out? I think that's a fair take.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say that Xavier Worthy is bad at adjustments while the ball's still in the air on deep balls. There are some times where you can tell the adjustment he makes is good and he comes down with a catch.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there's some plays. I don't want to come back to this play too much because I would not classify this as a drop, and it would have been a really, really difficult. It would have been a really difficult catch to make, but it was still a catchable ball, kind of, that deep pass that Hudson Card had to Worthy. I don't remember if that was in the first or second quarter against UTSA. Do you remember the one I'm talking about, back of the end zone? Probably landed about 2.
Oh yeah, straight in the middle back. Yes, yeah. Yeah. It bounced up. Yep.
He is he like Randy Moss? No. That's the type of ball that you really only expect a Calvin Johnson or a Randy Moss to catch.
Yeah.
But he doesn't I don't know. There were plays that he made last season that at least lets me know that yeah, we've seen him catch that sort of ball before, and it looked like he was pretty far off, that his adjustments didn't get him very close to that one, or at least as close as we've seen. Do I think he's giving up on deep balls? No. You can see the body language of a receiver that's given up at times this season when you watch Keyshawn Butte.
Yeah.
And I don't think you're seeing that from Worthy, where they're on similar talent levels. So I'm not going to say you. I'm not going to
I
say
think it'd be interesting to note, and I'm going to go back after we finish this and run through the like 6 to 8 or so deep shots that he's gotten so far this year. I feel like this could just be wildly inaccurate, but I feel like he's so focused on, beating his man, and a lot of these throws are coming out really early that I think it's a lot of he doesn't locate the ball quick enough. And by the time he turns up, it may not, like a lot of these throws, especially from Huddy, aren't, right in the breadbasket. So he needs to have time to adjust. And he's not giving himself that time to adjust because he's just kind of worried about the straight line speed. Let me get by my defender and we'll figure it out from there. So I'm gonna be interested. Maybe I'll make like a little compilation on Twitter of that because I think it would be interesting. And certainly, I know I'm not, and I know you're not. We're not bashing, one of the best receivers to come through the 40 in a couple of years, but I think
Yeah.
there's just something interesting to look at going forward.
Yeah, I think with Worthy, and Tech's just not really the team to do it. I think West Virginia, there's going to be opportunities to get him out in more space, get him involved more in the short and intermediate passing game, especially if Ewers is back. But, like, one of the things that I think a lot of people overlook with Worthy is just the fact, he's still not a big receiver. I'd be surprised if the dude is he's not north of 170 pounds.
No.
He's not, is he, for his size, is he good at contested situations? Yes, but it's more a body control that he succeeds with than just downright, beating out someone, just out muscling them to the ball. Yeah. That's not going to be him. And, yes, he was better in contested catch situations last season than he was this year. To be honest, Texas doesn't really have anyone that has succeeded in contested catch situations on a consistent basis. I think really the only two they have that that have proven, or at least I like to think that they have proven that they can do it, is JT Sanders, just because I firmly believe that he can, and Jordan Whittington, because for a slot receiver, he's about as good as it gets at 6'1" for contested catches. Now, Worthy, I just Texas has kind of boxed him in ways this season where it's half his usage has been just clearly designed routes that they've been working on in practice for a while. And I don't know how many times he's had more than a yard or two of separation on those deep balls. They're almost always contested to some degree. So we can, yes, he has dropped some, and I would expect him to have at least one score at this point. He just needs a big game, I think, to get him going.
And if anything you need to know about Worthy, just look at that catch against Alabama, where you have the still shot of him getting his face mask absolutely yanked on the full layout, coming up with the ball. That's all you really need to know about him. But it is interesting to note. He's almost a victim of his own success,
Yeah.
Because of what he did his freshman year. But going back to that final thing that you just said about him not scoring yet, that's not – I think when it comes to wide receivers, I think Water will find its level with that. I'm not too worried. One thing I did want to note when I was looking over the numbers for Tech, the Texas offense has struggled, mainly against Alabama, putting 7 points on the board when they get in the red zone. On the other hand, the Tech defense has been really good at limiting teams to field goals. I believe 3 out of 8 red zone drives the Tech defense has given up this season, only 3 have ended in touchdowns. So that's really going to be a battle inside of the battle to watch. What Texas can do in the red zone, especially if Hudson isn't 100%, that run element might not be there. So I think going to some wildcat with Bojo will be an interesting and effective move. I'm still waiting. I know you mentioned it last week about a Roshan Johnson pass, maybe a one deep down.
Yeah, we still haven't.
I think something in the red zone could be effective, like a little Tebow jump pass, maybe at the 5-yard line. You sneak Gunnar Helm out or something. I think that could be something that would be Sarkisian to look into.
I'll be honest, I'm really surprised at the lack of usage of that. Maybe it's a testament to just like a lack of confidence in that. Maybe like they've tried in practice and it's just not there. But I mean, I would trust Sark on this matter if that were the case where it's like, yeah, but I would have thought at some point with Roshan north of three dozen, I think, snaps at quarterback since around the midpoint of last season. So I don't know. But it's working, so I'm not going to complain.
Exactly.
Yeah, red zone defense is an interesting point. I mean, I think a lot of Texas's stats this season in the red zone are skewed, but I haven't been super impressed with their red zone offense. I mean, like their red zone offense is like Rojo in the Wildcat, or just hand it to Bijan Robinson until he scores. That's not a bad strategy, but I mean, it's one that like Tech is going to know it's coming, and like if that's all you do, then yeah, we might end up with more field goals than touchdowns in the red zone, and that'll be an issue. I think my final thought on Tech is that if I'm just looking at like the Texas offense, is that you know what? Let me talk about the Tech offense, like because talk about enough about the Tech defense and Texas offense. Now we match up. I think that I think the Tech offense, like the wide receivers, are good. I mean, maybe they just have an amazing week, but like West Virginia's wide receivers, they're different. But like Bryce Ford Wheaton, I don't think Tech has someone that good. So, yeah, I mean, I like this is one where I think Texas actually matches up pretty well. Hopefully we don't have a situation where, oh man, how do you say his name? Loic, I've never been able to pronounce that consistently.
Who?
Fungi? Fungi? He's one of their outside guys. Anyway.
Yeah. I don't have a. No, I don't. It doesn't give me a pronunciation on that.
Yeah. Anyway, I believe that was him that had one of those big second half touchdown passes against when Texas played Tech last season. I think one of those touchdowns in the second half was Loic going for maybe it was like 50, 60 yards, maybe more, but. That was the play where Deshaun Jameson was chasing him down, and then Brendan Schooler comes over and decks him on the side, like near the sideline. But like outside of like that play from last season, the personnel that Texas has back, I will say, looking back, like Jaron Thompson had some rough ones that game, but like looking back on the film, from how Jaron Thompson has played this season compared to like games like Tech or just early in Big 12 play last season or against Arkansas, Jaron Thompson, man, he's so much just like the way they're utilizing him is so much better. They're not asking him to be like this world-beating downhill safety this season like they were at times last year. And he's a good field general in the back end. He's a good field safety when what you're asking him to do is manage the space a few levels deep in the defense, come down and maybe make those third, fourth level tackles in the run game when you need to. And then, just shade over the top. And he's doing well in that this season. That's going to be a big thing. I think Texas can manage these wide receivers in the short and intermediate passing game. I'll be interested to see how Ryan Watts matches up. I'm still a little bit worried about that. Otherwise, though, like Jade, Jaron, Deshaun, I think they match up great with these Tech wide receivers. I think they all have the edge when it comes to just like short area quickness, physicality. We'll see. But like if they could deal with UTSA level of physicality, UTSA wide receivers, those three played well for the most part in that game. I'd be able to count on them this weekend.
Yeah, I think it is. It is interesting to note that when you come off a game against a Group of 5 team, you don't expect. let me put it this way: like the UTSA wide receivers are a better group than a lot of what Texas is going to see in Big 12 play, or at least pretty comparable. When you think about a normal Group of 5 matchup, you worry about the talent discrepancy and how it's gonna rear its head the next week. But UTSA's wide receivers are going to be some of the better players that this defensive backfield is going to see all season long. Granted, they didn't hold up great, but it was enough to hold UTSA to 20 points, and when it mattered, they made big plays in the secondary. So I think that should be noted too. I hate the notion, not to go back to UTSA, but when people just they don't see UTSA further than the name of University of Texas, San Antonio, and the University of Texas at Austin. They don't give UTSA the credit they should. Therefore, Texas doesn't get the credit for handling them by 21 points. It's kind of my point.
Yeah, and I'll try to wrap up Tech, and we can get into our predictions here in a moment, and just obviously the UTSA talk too. But the biggest knock that I had on the defense in the first half, beyond them just coming out a little bit sleepy, was I think that they were playing too soft, and I think that's partially on the defensive staff. Like, they made good in-game adjustments, but UTSA was getting 5 or 7 yards off the line of scrimmage. They were getting whatever they wanted to, and you can't that's a good way to get the Tech offense in rhythm, is if you're playing soft, to let Donovan Smith get some of those short passes in, not have to worry about coming under pressure. I think that the Longhorns staff is smart enough to not do that again.
Yeah.
But obviously, Anyway,
there's at least 2 separate times where UTSA picked up third downs on Jalen Gulliby when it was 3rd and 5 and he was playing 8 yards off in the slot.
Oh, Gilbo? Sorry.
Or Gilbo, yeah, Gulliby. Jalen Gilbo was playing, 8 yards off on a 3rd and 5, and he's playing in the slot, and it's a quick slant, and they picked up the first down. Is someone telling him to do that? Is that a personal choice? Whatever it is, I think, I trust these guys enough to be able to handle their own, playing up a little bit.
Yeah, that's true. And I'll get my prediction, but to cap kind of what you were saying. Yeah, Gilbo looked really good against Louisiana Monroe, and I think that showed what he can do. But I think also the last 2 games have really showed okay, he's still a true freshman. Jade is the starter at Spur, and Gilbo will take over after him, but he's still got some growth left. So I can't remember. I think it was, I did the actual betting odds and prediction piece for the week. And I'm going to stick to my guns with that one. I think that I can see this game somehow turning into something a little bit more high scoring. Turnovers are just going to play a role this weekend. Texas has done really well in the turnover battle, and Tech is I think Tech is -4, -5, somewhere in that department, -4, -5 so far this season. They might actually be worse. So, you win the turnover battle in this one if you're Texas, which you probably should. I think you win the game. This one is probably to what I'm talking about with turnovers, and to your point with red zone offense. I think you win in red zone offense and you win the turnover battle. I think this game is as simple as that. Barring some other complete lapse elsewhere. So I do think it's going to be higher scoring, because I just think there's going to be more possessions. I said 37-31 and Texas winning. I know but I don't know. When was the last time we really had a low scoring game with Tech?
Not top
2017?
for sure.
I think it was 2017 was the last time there was a low scoring one, and that was the most forgettable Tech game. That was the last time we lost to Tech. So, I mean, that was probably the most forgettable Tech game in a long time, too.
Yeah, 2017 was 27-23. Other than that, we had a 2010 was 24-14. Other than that, at least one team's been putting up 30 or 40 points per. So
Yeah, I have a feeling it's going to go. I have a feeling that it's going to hit the over this week. It's like
my prediction is actually very similar. I had 37-24 Texas win. So I have the defense holding Tech to one less touchdown than you. But I don't know. I kind of agree with you. I think there are going to be turnovers by both teams, and how Texas responds is going to be huge because the Red Raider crowd is going to be rocking. I mean, it's a midday ABC game, first sellout since the 2018. Any little momentum that Texas gets, that crowd is going to eat it up. So I think it's going to be important for Texas to be prepared as much as can. I think they will be, and I see them invincible in a way in the second half by a couple more. But I think the first 2 quarters could be a bit low. Yeah, I got 37-24. You could also tell me, Tech pulls the upset. Talking about, a lot of issues going on. But I think this team's a little different. I see them Tech in Lubbock.
Yeah, when I think about it, I think like 30. It really. I have a tough time seeing how Tech gets to 31, but I also look at like time of possession stats so far this season, and Tech has played with a pretty decent outside of the NC State game, and even in the NC State game, they were playing at a decent pace. They just weren't executing. So I mean, obviously, with Zach Kitley, he plays at an extraordinarily high pace. And so I think pace is going to dictate a lot of this game just in terms of the volume of scoring. So we can kind of get into it now. Well, actually, let me say this. I hope that I'm wrong for the 4th straight week.
I mean, a win's a win. I think
Yeah.
The Texas fan base, not to say expectations are too high, but getting out of Lubbock any way, shape, or form with a W, in the column is good. It doesn't matter if it's not pretty. Lubbock's a place where, we don't want our team to be any longer than they need to, and it's a place that all you can do is kind of hope to escape with a win. So I think no matter how it looks, as long as it's a victory, it's a good sign.
Yeah, that is fair. I see a close game happening. All right, so let's, Big 12 play is upon us, a few days away now. We've already got some Big 12 games in the books, and we already have a hot story to talk about in the Big 12 with the Jayhawks, which is weird. Just your thoughts on the picture of the Big 12, and then I'd like to know what you can give like a top 5 or maybe your top 2 and 1.
Okay.
What you're thinking by season end there?
Yeah, so you just mentioned the Jayhawks. I was pretty high on Kansas coming into the season, which is almost an oxymoron in a sense because I think I still picked them to finish 10th in the Big 12. But
It's just second nature at this point.
Yeah, I mean they have that win over West Virginia, which huge for them going forward. 3-0. I assume they're going to beat Duke. 4-0. I couldn't tell you the last time Kansas started 4-0, but they're a really fun team to watch. They made me some money this year, so that helps with them being fun to watch. But the combination of Jalen Daniels at quarterback and Devin Neal running the football, this offense is really, really fun to watch. And if you're out there and you haven't tuned in any Jayhawk games yet, which I wouldn't blame you, Duke, Kansas might not be the most appealing to the eye, but I think really any Kansas game going forward, they're going to put up points, and you should get some eyeballs on Jalen Daniels because he's a true dual threat quarterback that is going to pose problems to every single defense in this conference, which to me is, especially at the college level, all you need to win most games is a competent quarterback that can kind of put you on their shoulders when need be. So,
Yeah.
no, I don't think the Jayhawks are going to be 6-3 in Big 12 play, but I do think there's a really good chance they can get to 3 Big 12 wins, which would be the first time, and I think a decade plus. And I also could see them beating one of the teams that finished towards the top of the conference, because if Daniels kind of goes berserker mode and has one of those games against an Oklahoma State, against a Texas or Baylor or whoever, he could lead the Jayhawks to a victory in that sense. But yeah, I really enjoy watching the Jayhawks, and I'm going to be a Kansas backer until they let me down.
Yeah, I don't know how much for Kansas we're going to learn about them this weekend. I don't want to turn this into a Kansas show at this point because that would just be weird. But yeah, I mean, it's weird saying this, but I feel like at least offensively, Kansas actually really matches up well with Duke. Like they have a lot more athletes. They have a lot more speed. They have better size. I mean, Duke has played well to start the season. Mike Elko was a good hire for them, but. Yeah, I mean, I think Jalen Daniels is going to present problems for them. I'm really interested to see how Kansas plays against Iowa State next weekend. I think that's going to be a big test. Iowa State definitely has one of the better defensive fronts in the Big 12, which is going to put pressure on Jalen Daniels in ways that he has not faced yet. So, yeah, overall, I mean, Kansas has been impressive. I also think Houston had a nice little, inner collapse on their sideline. And so how much that plays a role, I guess we'll see moving forward. Also, just kind of the bigger picture for the Big 12 at this point. I mean, I think you got to like where Texas is sitting. It looks like we lost Shane there for a moment. Oh, okay. Got you back.
Oh, okay. I can hear you now.
Gotcha. Okay. Sorry about that. So I think Texas is sitting in a good spot right now. The Oklahoma schools are looking impressive. Baylor, I don't think I've learned enough about yet. Baylor's an interesting one to me because I never felt like I was as high on Blake Shapen as everyone else was. I looked at him as like a glorified Charlie Brewer. Yeah. I think he lacks a lot of like the big time arm strength or just velocity that you need, which Charlie Brewer, I mean, like they both have that weird level of escapability, can run the ball if they need to, good in the short and intermediate passing. I mean, really just don't make a lot of mistakes. But like, I was at the Big 12 championship game last year. I mean, it's for undergrad. I'm an Oklahoma State grad, and that was a really painful way to end the game. But at the same time, like Baylor's not winning that game. Blake Shapen didn't really win them that game. It was Spencer Sanders throwing 4 interceptions that lost that game. And so I think this season for Baylor to get a Big 12 championship, you're going to have to see a new level of Blake Shapen coming to the forefront. I think there's going to be another team. I really do think there's going to be another team that sneaks up there. I had a preseason prediction of Kansas State being in the Big 12 championship game, and just that doesn't look very good right now. But yeah, I'm going to go on the day that it was announced that Bedlam will not be taking place likely beyond 2023, that it's going to be a Bedlam Big 12 championship game. And I think Texas is going to want – I can see Texas finishing in 3rd place. I will say, like, if I had to name a 4th and a 5th, I could see Kansas sneaking into that 5th spot. I think that's doable. I haven't learned enough about TCU yet to really give a solid take. I'm going to put Iowa State in 4th. I've liked what I've seen from their defense so far this season. I have not learned enough about their offense to give any takes on that. But, yeah I'm gonna give a weird kind of top 5 there, but yeah.
So yeah, Baylor not in your top 5.
Uh, yeah, I could see. I have a tough
I
time
mean,
putting
you were
Kansas ahead of
tempered
Baylor,
on Chapin, so that makes sense.
but I mean, we have Baylor Iowa State this weekend, and
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe that prediction gets shot down quickly, but if Iowa State comes out on top, isn't that game in Ames?
I'm not sure. I haven't really looked at I haven't gone through my whole slate yet. I think
Yeah.
I do think you make a good point that honestly I have learned really not a ton through the first 3 weeks that would change my overall opinion from the beginning of the season in regards to Big 12 and to the 10 teams in the Big 12. Um, Obviously, there have been like some losses at Kansas State losing last week. So I was never on Kansas State. There have been some people in the Big 12 community that predicted them, to maybe make it to Dallas. I don't know. I just see making like freshman year. Yes, he's what the all-time leader in yard demographic. I'm like, man, I just don't trust that guy either. And it kind of reared its ugly head last weekend. Deuce Vaughn is electric, but I don't see this Kansas State team being much better than the Skylar Thompson Kansas State teams. And those teams were what 7-5, 8-4. They'd have a big win every year, but they weren't really the upper echelon of the Big 12. So I don't think they deserve to be up near the top, especially after what we saw last weekend. Also, Oklahoma State. Like you said, did the undergrad there. I assume you follow them more closely than I do, but I think that the Jim Knowles loss maybe affected them more than people think. What was that opening week game against one of the Michigans for the Western
Oh,
Conference?
Central Michigan. Yeah.
What? So was that? I was working, so I couldn't get any eyes on that game. I know Oklahoma State took a really big lead early, and then Central put up points at the end. Is that just kind of just garbage time from
Yeah,
them?
so if I can give a synopsis on Oklahoma State's defense, yes, Jim Knowles was better last year than Derek Mason. I think Derek Mason would have been last year because Jim Knowles was consistently building upon something to the point where Oklahoma State had nothing but like 5th and 6th year guys in the back 7. Oklahoma State, it's almost the opposite now. The secondary is pretty young. There's some talent back there. There's still some solid guys, but like it's the front 7. The front and the defensive line is crazy deep. The defensive line I would think has to be the best in the Big 12. And still one of the best in the country. It's just so deep. Oklahoma State, if there's a game where Texas can give up 5 sacks but also pass for 350 yards,
Yeah.
it's going to be Oklahoma State.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Yeah. I would just say, just kind of at a macro level, Oklahoma, besides that first half against Kent State, they have looked, dominant. And I think it almost could be one of those things where the Riley loss is good for both parties, because Venables had, some weird choice of words in the offseason when it came to recruiting and different stuff, but he knows how to coach the defense. And this Oklahoma defense has been their Achilles heel for, the past 5+ years. This year it's going to be a strength. And I think Gabriel, though he's not Tyler Maryville in Mayfield or he's a really good quarterback and towards the upper tier of the Big 12 in that regard. So I think if anything, as much as it pains me to say, I think I wouldn't shoot in Oklahoma to make it to Dallas because I do think they're probably still going to be like 7-2 in the Big 12. But I think that would be my favorite to end up in the Big 12 championship game. And then really, I mean, I'm going to go with Texas just because, I'm a little bit of a homer. And if Quinn can get back sooner than was originally reported, which seems to be trending in the right direction, I trust him, which is crazy to say because the snap This is so crazy. I mean, and you probably have a great perspective on this that I want to hear. I do not trust Spencer Sanders at all, and that could be just. I don't know if I've created this own bias against him in my head,
Yeah.
but Quinn Ewers, who has played what 3 quarters against ULM and 1 against Alabama, he's played 4 total college quarters. I trust him more than I trust Spencer Sanders in year 4, which could be crazy. But as someone who follows both programs very closely, what is your kind of take on Sanders in that?
Yeah, so I mean, without getting too deep into it, because Oklahoma State fans like Spencer Sanders just a very polarizing subject. But um, I, Spencer Sanders is going to have the best season of his collegiate career this year as long as he stays healthy, and that is without a doubt. He is the best version of himself that he has been in college. That is true. Spencer Sanders is still Spencer Sanders, where it's almost like when you look at like Kirk Cousins, right? Where it's like he's gotten to be pretty solid at this point. Once in a while, though, I don't know if it's in one game or maybe just one half or even maybe just a few throws in a game, there's going to be some times where he is just insanely inaccurate.
Yeah.
And we saw that once last season against Texas where he just like overthrew, I can't remember if that was overthrew or underthrew, but just completely missed an out route by about 5 yards and threw it right to Deshaun Jameson. And I mean, maybe we see that again, but yeah, Oklahoma State, I think, like, at least I have faith that I know what they are.
Yeah.
Because I've seen this before where it's like, okay, you have a good quarterback. At the same time, though, when Oklahoma State had a quarterback that everyone could rely on, like, i.e. kind of a Mason Rudolph, I don't think they made it to a single – I mean, they had, like, de facto Big 12 championship games in Bedlam, but they never – like, I think there was one year where they could have, and they didn't make it to the Big 12 championship game that season. He choked under pressure a few times in Bedlam. So, not choked. Yeah. Didn't play well when he needed to. So, yeah, I don't know. OU, I think, is the safe pick.
Yeah.
For the title game, and then, like, Texas, in a weird way, is, I think, like, a little bit of a safe pick for the top 3 right now. Like, the defense is probably going to be solid. The run game's going to be there. What they have in terms of, like, wide receiver personnel. Quarterback health, obviously, still a question. But, yeah, it's interesting for sure how the roles have changed.
Yeah, I think I'd be interested to go back to this discussion maybe post week 5 after most Big 12 teams have gotten in 2 games under their belt against each other. Because I think once we see these teams match up against each other, the picture is going to become like very clear. I think it's gonna like, who does Oklahoma get this week? Or
is OU on a bye? Oh, Kansas State. They have the Saturday. Oh, that'll be interesting. Yeah, they have the Saturday night game.
Yeah, so they have Kansas State and then TCU. I think there's a chance that and then obviously we have the game in Dallas. I think there's a chance Oklahoma could boat race Kansas State and boat race TCU, and then we're looking at a 5-0 Oklahoma team that comes in to Dallas ranked 4th in the country, and people are like, this team is really dang good. Where there was a little bit of question at the beginning of the season, there is no more question. Brent Venables' team is allowing 13 points a game, and this offense really hasn't slowed down a bit. So I think that's a very real possibility.
Yeah, I don't think OU is a playoff team, and I might be eating my words there. Maybe OU, I don't think, like, I think if OU plays Georgia, they're just going to get outclassed in every way. But yeah, you made a good point earlier where it's like with Lincoln Riley, I think OU is not in a good spot long term in the SEC. Whereas like Brent Venables, I think at least better than Lincoln Riley in terms of like what you're recruiting to and the long-term vision of the program.
Yeah, and going to that, I completely agree with that. If Oklahoma isn't in the class of the top 4 right now, I think what they could be is just a victim of, or what their ranking could show is they're playing in a Big 12 conference where there's a lot of teams who are, in between the 15th and 35th best team in the country, and Oklahoma might be the 7th best team in the country, and they're able to just beat everyone else. They always have that one football, but if they can avoid that and have the win, the record's going to look really nice. And I think it's because I don't trust any of the other Big 12 teams, even Texas, to really be able to compete week in and week out at a top 10 level.
Yeah, I mean, like Texas has to prevent the slip-ups where it's like you can't lose this week. I mean, you can't lose this weekend. You can't lose like the Iowa State game, I don't think. Maybe Iowa State comes out and just like beats Baylor by like 21. And maybe it's like oh crap, Iowa State's like really good, and we just kind of realized that like, okay, Brock Purdy really wasn't like the greatest thing in the world the last few years, and so if Hunter Dekkers plays well, like even if he's not great, if he just plays well, then Iowa State's going to be pretty good. Yeah, like I feel good with Baylor at like number 5 or number 6. I didn't know that they're actually underdogs this weekend in Ames. So.
Oh, are they really?
Yeah, they 2.5 point dogs.
I think that is a take that I think we should clip that and tweet that out, because that's a take that I think will get the internet going. It'll get the viewers going. And if you're right, I think that's like a hell of a coin in your back pocket, because Baylor, I mean, I don't think anyone has them, at 6 best in the Big 12. And I don't disagree with you at all. I don't disagree with you at all, but you're the first one to come out and like say that and have like some valid points to back it up, and I think it would be a great call if it does happen.
I'm just looking at Baylor's schedule this year, and like I think they're a victim of their own schedule, because they play a sneaky difficult schedule where it's like, I really like Texas against Baylor. That was my biggest upset prediction in my preseason game-by-game predictions for Texas. Like, Texas just always plays well in that finale game for some reason. I mean, it's better that they do than they don't, but, like, Baylor, they get Oklahoma State at home. So, I mean, I think they'll probably win that one. But like they go to OU, so they go to OU, they go to Iowa State, and they go to Texas. And I could see all 3 of those games being losses for them. And I could see them losing to, TCU. Weird things always happen with that one. Like Kansas State, we'll see. And then the Oklahoma State game, that one's next weekend. So like, I can see Baylor. I mean, if I had to put an over-under on their losses in Big 12 play at this point, I'm putting it at 3 or 4.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I think that's very fair. Yeah, I'm just talking about this. I'm so excited to see these teams, match up because it's been months of looking at it on paper, So to actually see it go on, it's gonna be nice.
Yeah, that's true. I'm gonna give You had OU Texas.
Yep.
In the Big 12 game.
I'm gonna hold off on a winner on that.
Okay.
But I got OU Texas.
Yeah, I got OU winning the Big 12. I said that during the preseason. I'm gonna hang on to that prediction. And then who was your third?
I think Oklahoma State will be third. I obviously I mentioned I don't trust Spencer Sanders, but they're talented.
There's going to be a high, like, whenever Gundy has an experienced quarterback, it's a weird thing. There's a pretty high floor on his teams. He knows what he can trust. He's had his offensive coordinator, Casey Dunn, has been there. Just mainly his wide receivers coach. He's been there for a long time. Like, Oklahoma State, you know what you're going to get, I think. I think it's a similar situation in a way. So, like, why I would feel good about Iowa State if they had a more experienced quarterback, where it's like I just feel like there's a high floor.
Yeah.
And just in general, I think there's a high floor at this point on Matt Campbell teams and a pretty low ceiling.
That's fair. That's very fair. That's proven itself over time for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so I'll kind of give some of my parting shots here. Just while we're on the Big 12 subject, because yeah, I mean we're at the point of the season where I think we're just going to start figuring out more about who teams actually are, some of their, what the identities of a lot of the Big 12 teams. West Virginia, Virginia Tech, I'm excited for the game. I think West Virginia, I would actually have as my last place team in the Big 12 at this point. I've seen indications of really just even the defense giving up on Neil Brown at times where I don't know. It just doesn't seem like everyone's as bought in as they would have been a few years ago. They've got a lot of transfers, had a lot of key guys transfer out. Offense is okay. They definitely have weapons, but it's just the defense I would have a lot of questions about. And Virginia Tech is kind of a mess right now too. I don't know how much you can trust them. With that said, outside of the Texas Tech game and then the Kansas State OU games, because those are kind of the big ones in the Big 12 this weekend. Yeah, I would say that. Baylor, Iowa State, obviously, as I mentioned earlier, going to be watching with a keen eye. And then I'm going to be watching TCU SMU. I don't really know what to make of TCU because, to say the least, you're not going to learn a whole lot about them when they're playing Colorado and Tarleton State to open up the season. Man, Colorado's so bad. They might be the worst Power 5 team in the country.
I think they are. Yep, I think they are.
And TCU, there was times when they were struggling to pull away.
Yeah,
in the first half.
It was an ugly first half. It was not even watchable, really.
And Max Duggan's put up some big numbers, but we know what Max Duggan is.
Yeah.
He might improve a little bit. And they have weapons. Quentin Johnston is a really, really good wide receiver that's going to be playing on Sundays soon. But they lost Zach Evans. The defense is okay, but yeah, I don't Sonny Dykes was never a great Power 5 head coach. I've mentioned that before, and I don't know. They lose to SMU this weekend. I think it's gonna be really telling of maybe a 4 or 5 win TCU team.
Yeah, and SMU's gonna be amped up. That's for sure. Mustang ready to go.
Yeah, I think Rhett Lashley's gonna have those guys ready to go. But I'll get my last 2 parting shots here. Where one, I know we were discussing it before we jumped on here, but Jalen Hale, we got the decision tomorrow. That's a big one. If we get him, you probably, unless you get a wide receiver transfer in season, maybe that's something to watch. Where it's hey, maybe next week you get a Jaden Alexis, and I don't mean to pick on Jaden Alexis here. I'm just saying one of the guys deeper down the depth chart that's had a tough time finding his way onto the field. If you find someone like that in the transfer portal soon, one of the younger wide receivers, maybe you take an MHP. Because I have a hard time. McCall Harrison Pilot, if you're saying we ran out of room for you, I don't know if there's ever been a better recruit that I can remember Texas having a chance at, or at least a more versatile one, where they're no, we're good. When you're taking 4 wide receivers, yeah. So Jalen Hale, Texas has a really good chance, I think. I mentioned this off screen. I would put the chances at 65 to 70% for tomorrow if I'm just aggregating the expert predictions, some of the analyst forecasts, but also judging the way things have gone. A&M and Georgia probably aren't playing a role in his decision tomorrow. So it's going to be Texas, Alabama. And then my last thing that I have is I wanted to actually talk about this more during the show. I'm honestly surprised that the quarterback talk has died down so much. I think that Texas fans are so happy that Malik and Quinn are back at practice and Hudson Card, dude, I don't know if he put steroids, injected steroids in his ankle or what, but I've had 2 high ankle sprains in my life. Yeah. And I get it. I'm not a D1 athlete, but I had an ankle sprain playing a sport before. It took 6 weeks. I think the last time I had one for me to be okay, it's, I'm not even limping on it anymore when I'm playing. So I don't know. I still think Hudson Card's going to be QB1 this weekend. I would like to see Ewers come back maybe next weekend against West Virginia, maybe split reps. I think the best case scenario there is that you get Hudson or like Quinn Ewers back for the West Virginia game. Texas gets up by like 28 in the second half, and you can just go ahead and throw in Hud.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. I think that's fair. And I think, I mean, obviously we don't, he's definitely, Hudson's definitely living in the training room throughout the whole week, but it definitely speaks to after that long run he had last Gimpy. So I think he just finds it in him, running on adrenaline, to pull it out. And I also think it's not fair to completely grade him like on a fully healthy scale because he's not. So
yeah,
planting that foot and throwing the deep ball might not be there. Whereas it's really easy for us to kind of say, oh, he doesn't have a good deep ball. He doesn't throw it like Quinn. He doesn't throw it as well as Quinn, but it doesn't mean he's inept. So I think he's just gritty. I think he's just, and I love it. And I was gonna say this is like super early. This is a super early opinion, but if everything goes to plan, like how Sark has set it up for the Quinn to Arch kind of bridge, I'm gonna be cheering so hard for whatever school Hudson Card transfers to. Like that's gonna be, they're gonna be
oh yeah.
one B for me, week in week out because that dude is the past 2 weeks I mean he's left it out all on the field for Texas and like I said at the beginning of this video, no Hudson Card slander is allowed.
What about this? This feels like a.
Oh no, I don't know.
This is gonna be the hottest take that I've come out with outside of
Okay.
like the Roschon Johnson thing last week. So you're gonna know where I'm going with this. Like as soon as I mention the name, you might know already. But we've got some high profile head coaching semi high profile head coaching vacancies for it being this early in the season. One high profile, one other decent Power 5 job. What if you see Tom Herman getting hired at ASU? I'd say ASU might be a little bit more realistic than Nebraska.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I don't. You know what? I have no idea what's more realistic for Tom Herman. But he was the. I mean, Hudson Card was recruited to Tom Herman's offense.
That's true.
I weirdly enough, like they are two completely like at least in terms of the way they're built, they are different quarterbacks, but like you could see what like Tom Herman was excited about with Hudson Card. And like in ways how like that offense would go at least like a pretty high level like it was in some of the better games under Sam.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I mean, Sam obviously was like the leader of the program for 4 years and like, or at least 3. And like Hudson Card, I mean, just in terms of the level of toughness and just like leaving it all out on the field, all that sort of stuff, and not making mistakes, managing the game well. Like Sam Ehlinger, I think like it's underrated how well, like how good of like a game manager he was. Like after his like really at the outset of his sophomore season, like he wasn't making those mistakes anymore that was costing Texas at the end of games. He was doing the exact opposite, where he was managing it super well most of the time. And like I think you saw the same from Hudson at times last weekend.
I think
But
it's fair. Yeah.
yeah,
He's a
I don't
heady
know,
player.
man. That'd be so crazy if you saw Tom and
If
HUD
they
together at like
reunited,
ASU.
yeah, I think it's certainly a possibility. I mean, like you said, he recruited him, but
Yeah,
I would wonder if I think it could go one of two ways. It could be like a very obvious choice for Hudson, or it could be like I'm staying away from there because I don't want to reattach myself to Tom and then see it go poorly again. But I mean, he never really got any real snaps under Herman, so
no, or like Tom Herman ends up at Nebraska back with Casey Thompson. I guess you could look at that any number of ways.
Yeah.
But
there are a lot of angles. The Longhorn Trail is far and wide, that's for sure.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, man. Well, it is that time of the season where, like, actually, I don't think it's really that time of the season yet for Texas where we're really going to figure out, like, how the nature of the season's going to go at a high level. Like, I don't think we're going to figure out what the ceiling of the season is yet. I think we could figure out what the floor is.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, it's exciting. Like, if we're sitting here talking about Texas, like, potentially beating Texas Tech by 2 scores with a Hudson Card with, like, not even 2 weeks into a high ankle sprain, or 2 weeks after he suffered a high ankle sprain, like, something's going right so far, and I'm not.
Fair. It's a very fair point when you put it into words like that. Like, I predicted Texas by 13 with Hudson Card on a bum ankle. That shows all you need to know is what Texas has proven to everyone watching the first 3 weeks.
Yeah. And, I mean, yeah, Big 12 play obviously was a whole different monster for Texas last season. But, yeah, I mean, I've just got a lot better feeling about it this weekend. Hopefully tomorrow – I mean, I haven't heard anything yet about Demo's appeal.
Yeah, I haven't either. Hasn't been any news on that.
At least as of when we started the show. Okay. And, yeah, I mean, hopefully that is overturned.
Yes, if it's – yeah, yep.
There's something out for Demo if it's not. So, I don't – anyway. All right, well, we're cutting this probably about a little under an hour and a half. So, but, I mean, like I said, I felt like it was going to be a longer show this week, just Big 12 play really kicking into high gear this weekend, got some big games. So, yeah, I'll be ready.
Yeah, it'll be exciting. That's for sure. I mean, everyone loves the non-conference, as do I, but there's nothing like these true rivalries that come out, and you can really kind of find out where teams fit in late September, early October.
Yeah, and you always get a pretty insane level of entertainment too from Texas games in Lubbock. So
definitely,
I'm sure. But anyway, yeah, that's pretty much it for this week. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we'll have still plenty to talk about next week. Probably not as much heading into the West Virginia game, but hopefully we're talking about going 4-1 heading into Red River at that point.
Yeah,
so
4-1 did us a little dirty last year, but it's a new year. That's all I'll say.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, for Andrew, Shane over at Hook'em Headlines, we'll have some stuff linked below in the video as well, and we will be back. Be back next week. That's pretty much it. Yeah.